So welcome to our first webinar of 2025. This morning we have one of our quick 15-minute coffee break webinars. So we're going to be introducing you to Foldr. So this morning we're going to be looking at Foldr Core, which is designed to speed up access to all your important files through a single interface. And in the next coming weeks, we're also going to be looking at the additional modules that are available in Foldr. So next time we will look at Capture, which will provide the ability to extract data and gain insight from your documents with smart templating and intelligent processing. We'll then move on to Mash, which allows us to make your work flow with a nice, simple, deceptively powerful automation. And then finally, we're going to finish off the series of webinars with Folio. So as of January 2024, an additional license feature became available, and that is called Folio. And this allows external users to sign in directly into Foldr's main web page, and that'll give them access to all shared items quickly in a convenient shared with me panel.
Good morning, chaps and ladies. Thanks for joining. This is not new content. I'm going to say that here. We have been talking about working with and vaguely in love with Foldr now for some time. And we forget actually as we drive along, and the new features are being added to Foldr at such an explosive rate, really, that we get very excited about those new things. And we felt it was probably a nice idea to come back and just refresh what the core of this product does, what the if you like, the foundations of the product are, because we perhaps are so familiar with it that we forget to refresh your mind. So we're just going to ram through this if I can make everything work. I'm having a bit of an IT morning, as I was saying to Diane. So let's take a bit of a look. First of all, there we go. Introduce Foldr. So these guys, if you aren't hugely familiar with the product, and if you are, hopefully stick with us. Might be a few things we remember, remind you of. But if you're not familiar with them, they're an English organization. They were formed more than a decade ago. They're headquartered in Bristol, which actually is why it's spelt the way it is, I think. I do believe it to be a bit of a joke because it's not Foldr, it's Foldr. So if you've ever been to Bristol, hopefully that makes a bit more sense. They're still headquartered here. The guys who started the company still own the company, and they still work, develop and support the product every single day. And they've been consistently developing this thing for over that decade now. And as I said, this is the fastest growing product that we have in terms of technology and capability. It's a product many people have not heard of, and yet they've supported over 1 million users. They've had 250,000 people sign in on their iOS apps. They have 1,200 schools using it on a daily basis. This is a best kept secret, if you like, which is the way we like it. And this is the way Foldr like it as well, actually. Is that they become a true foundation to the organizations that they work within. And we mentioned what we're looking at today. There are a series of modules. There are actually 4 modules to the Foldr product. The fourth isn't on here because we'll be talking about that one in the last piece. It's the latest one, which is called Folio. But today is about the core product, and it's still the most powerful component of the tool, and obviously frankly, the lowest cost component of it as well. So this is what really adds the capability. So we're going to come into and just take a very quick, I think 10-minute now look at the Foldr core product, just to give you an understanding of what that does. But I don't like reading bullet points. You can read them for yourself, but bear in mind that Foldr was always designed and is at its heart an access and security tool. Any ECM components we land up with, any data extraction components, any automation components, any of these things are built on the top of a class-leading security, access, device and user management platform. That's what this thing does. And I will just say, if you're not familiar with it, before we go much further, anything you look at today is available as an on-premise solution with enterprise licensing. It's available as an on-premise like subscription license, and it's available as a fully hosted product as well. So talk to your account managers about how those things can be mixed and matched or built to do whatever it is that you need to do. Okay, so I think, and Diane, you'll have to keep an eye on the time for me, because you know me, I lose track. But let's just try and really explain where we are. Okay, Guys, like I said, if you're not massively familiar with the product, the idea of this is to give you a very fast overview, but I will keep saying the same thing through any of these sessions. If you want to know more, reach out to your account managers. They can put you in touch with the techies. They can talk to you about the commercials. They can talk to you about reseller offerings. They can talk to you about events and schedules and anything else you might want to do. So if there's anything interesting through this call or this session, sorry, first thing you need to do is pick up the phone or tap out an email to a Selectec salesperson straight away. All right, there you go. I'll keep saying that, mainly because they're much more organized than I am, and they will help you. There we go. Right, what does Foldr do? So what we're going to do is we're going to walk into an organization and we're going to talk to them about what they're doing. And in the traditional ECM world, then we have to tell them they need to burn it all down and do it differently. Don't put your documents in SharePoint. Don't put your documents in Google Drive, or don't dump them in your Windows server. You got to pick them up and put them in my doc management platform. And again, we're then building, in, well, from bitter experience, building objections to overcome in our own sales cycle. Foldr doesn't do that. We stick it into the organization. We open this umbrella of Foldr up, and it sticks its software prongs into all of the bits of the organization that already exists. So we've got this Foldr appliance, and it is looking at a customer's existing Windows server, their existing Windows dumps of data that might have been there for years. They might have their fingers in some Google Drive. We at Selectec are a Google adopted company, so we have to work with that. They might have some SharePoint going on. The adoption rates for SharePoint are massive, and what we're tending to find is where people look at document management and then decide to do nothing. What that actually means is we'll have a stab at in SharePoint. We've had tenders do that. If we talk to the sales guys, they'll be able to tell you where they were, where the actual winning bid was sticking in SharePoint. Thanks very much. Some legacy ones. Let's look at Dropbox. We might be looking at Box. There are still people that do that, strangely, and even AWS, S3 buckets. So literally any storage that the organization might have, Foldr can now reach into and access those files. And it means that we can have users all looking through the same interface. Now, we don't really have time today to show you it because of our 15 minutes, but I'm using a web interface here, and you might notice I'm a Mac user. So I'm a Mac user that's actually crawling safely around Windows servers with no pain, which is nice. But I also have a Mac desktop client, a Windows desktop client, an iOS embedded client, and that size of a phone and iPad as well, and an Android client as well. So that means that I can look into all of my existing storage through one uniform interface, regardless of the type of computer hardware I am using. I have used Foldr through a Kindle Fire HD Kids tablet. Now, that's the single worst piece of technology ever invented, and it still worked. Okay, it's my testing. When it's not doing that, it's holding a lid of a toolbox up. True story. Okay, so what can we do here? We're signed in, by the way. You didn't see me sign in. We don't really have time, but if I'm using entry users, if I'm using Google usables, if I'm using Active Directory, if I'm using any kind of authentication method, then Foldr can manage that. And it can even help us add things like multi-factor authentication into our platforms and things like that as well. So Foldr increases the available security in most of our customers. Okay, now it's all very well being able to actually see into these things, but I would like to be able to find them. So let's actually just run a search here. Let's go with this one, 80141. I'm really glad my keyboard's working after this morning. Okay. Now, taking a little minute, and you will see that that search has run across all of these vast amounts of storage that a business has got enabled to them. And the number of storage repositories that businesses have now is massive. We think about home folders, we think about different online storage, we think about multiple SharePoint environments, the legacy Windows servers. It's a huge amount of storage. And in this case, what's gone on is I've asked it to give me a content search. And we can take a look at all of this. And if I do this, you can see I'm going to hit highlight this. Now, this is a non-text searchable file. It's taken a little minute. And you can see the content being hit highlighted. it was reaching across all of our storage, and this file, as you can see, if you're looking really closely, there's a little bit of grey bloom around that. That is actually a scan. It's not a text searchable file. And Foldr OCRs these files in place. It doesn't convert them. It doesn't change them to searchable documents. It registers the content, stores them securely and encrypted within itself, and makes all those files searchable where they lay. And that means that if customers have got years worth of scanned documents coming off of their copiers and their MFDs, all of that can now be content mined, and it can be, all the value can be unlocked, and they can be made compliant. They can support their GDPR requests, they can support their FCA and their financial compliance requirements and things like that. So that content searching, and we can actually do slightly braver things like than that as well, by saving searches on content. So let's do this one. There we go. This is credit card numbers. Okay, so this is a compliance search, and you'll see here, if I just click on this one, I asked it to find any document that looks like it has a credit card number in it, and it's opened this on page 3 of the Tempest, and Shakespeare was somewhat confused. He dropped his credit card number into that. The reason we can do this is we can start to look for compliance, because the documents that are in their ECN, the ones that are properly filed away, are not the problem. But what happens if I've got documents with client reference numbers, tax reference numbers, NIMS values, NHS values, employment numbers, bank details, personal mobile numbers, credit card numbers? They need to be in the right place. So within Foldr, I can do these compliance searches, and I can start to drive around and find things that aren't in the right place, so they can be highlighted and moved. So we can start to do unstructured content. Now, we really are nowhere near enough time to do all of this, so let's just go on to one further thing. Okay, and you might notice, okay, there we go, that down the right hand side of these documents I have metadata fields. Okay, now this document is residing in a Windows share. It is not in a SharePoint environment. It is not in a document management platform. It isn't in anything smart or clever. It is sat in a Windows share. Now, ordinarily, and with SharePoint 365 storage as well, I would have the same thing. I would have literally just the file name and the location, and that isn't enough to store stuff. In fact, if I had more time, the presentation we're in, we'll cover it in subsequent sessions. If I had more time, we'll be talking about the amount of duplication on networks and the amount of lost files and what they amount to. Now with Foldr, what we can do, we'll talk about how these values get into these fields, but we can apply metadata fields to anything that we might want to. Okay, so we can know what the invoice number is, we can know what the purchase order number is, and what that means is that we can now search on those. On this, there we go. Let's try this one. I haven't tested this search. There we are. Okay, and now I can actually search for specific things. Don't just find this where it actually is a relevant value, and I can build complex searches, and I can return all of those views. So even though these files are just in 365 or just in SharePoint, or indeed just thrown into an S3 bucket or on a Windows server, I've got contextual searching with all of my field information laid out in front of me to be able to make good choices. And that can even be tidied up into doing things like, there we go, let's try and just tidy this up here. Let's do a 3-way match in here. Same kind of thing, just a tidier appliance, 20180. I don't even know if this is the right number. Or one, probably not. But hopefully we'll get some results. I don't even know. There you go. I can start to see that these are scan records, and I can start to pull things tidy and see that things are paid. Now, we have just run out of time, but we would normally, I think we've run out of time, Diane, is that right? Yeah, we have. We didn't even get halfway through the appliance, because where else we might have gone through is into how we share these documents, how we move these things forwards, how we move them sideways around our organization, how we audit trail these things. Just in my overrun time, just know that Foldr gives us the ability to share these things securely with external users, and even allow external users to share documents back into us. And we never duplicate the file. We don't send it into a large file send it environment, or copy it so we can throw it into an email box, so it's now in the original location. It's in my outbox, their inbox, everybody else's outbox and inbox as they forward it, and so on. We're working off of the source document, and we can also start to share those fields, move them around, and even create automations off of them. If you remember nothing today, just remember that when you actually start to work with and save Foldr environments, we don't need to burn down a customer's process. If they're adopted into SharePoint, if they're adopted into Google, if they've got a problem with a load of data still sat in legacy storage like Windows servers, Foldr is going to enable you to build a process that aligns to the way they work, improves on that, and builds their business on that, rather than telling them that they need to change everything, get everything burned down, and start again by routing that into whatever platform it is that you need them to sell. It's a much easier, less objection-based sales process. And that really is my key takeaway from Foldr. Any word on any page, in any piece of storage, natively through any computing device. And I think that's quite a powerful message to have.
It's a good place to end it. Thanks, Damien. We have loads of resources for you on Foldr as well. We have top questions to ask. We have use cases. So yeah, hopefully that's whetted your appetite enough to kind of want to learn more about it and how it can maybe even work within your own business. But obviously, ultimately, how it can work for your end customers. There are things available. So for our resellers, there are NFRs available. And yeah, we can always support your end customer with demonstrations and everything else. So I know my time is up. Please do reach out to us and look out for our next webinar, which will then move on to the additional modules like I mentioned, Capta, Mash and Folio. So keep your eye out for those. Please register and sign up, and do reach out if you have any questions.